In this video, we'll talk about how to sell art online. And for those of you who don't know me, I'm an artist myself. I've exhibited my work throughout the world: Berlin, Milan, Buenos Aires, London, Brussels. I've won a dozen awards and obviously sold my work through various platforms, online galleries, websites, through social media, and things like that. And in this video, I will be explaining how to sell art online, how to get things started, how to get those first sales coming in so that you can build some confidence and get things moving. My first tip is to simply start. One of the biggest secrets in the art world is that everybody who ever sold a piece of art didn't knew how to sell art before they sold their first piece of art. Nobody knew how to do it before they did. And the truth is that you are simply not going to know. No matter how many videos you see on my channel or on other channels, you are not going to know before you do it. It's in the doing itself that you learn. And the thing about starting is that you can start at any level. You don't have to be great in order to start, but you have to start in order to be great. The second tip is to not spend too much time acquiring art world credentials. It is true that some credentials will make the sales process smoother. People are simply more inclined and find it easier to buy from somebody who has won awards, who has done exhibitions, solo exhibitions, is represented by a gallery, has been featured in a famous magazine, etc., etc., etc. But most people overvalue those types of things. After doing all of that myself, I can safely tell you that most of those things were completely worthless. Winning awards and getting featured in famous magazines and stuff like that has way less impact on your art career than you think at this moment probably. And looking back, it's easy to see that I probably spent way too much time acquiring those credentials, time that I could have spent on doing other stuff, like for example selling art. And you would be surprised of how many people who win awards actually don't know how to sell their art. And so getting your priorities straight is very important. And as a quick little side note, I think I'm old enough now to say that the reason I participated in all of those competitions was because I was insecure and I needed some kind of proof that my art was good enough. And it's a long time ago, so it's hard to remember, but I even think that to some extent I had a desire to have at least the ability to brag. And so those competitions and those awards would give me that ability. And those reasons, fear, insecurity, and the desire to have the ability to brag are of course not the right reasons to do anything in life. And the whole credentials thing is kind of double as well, because in the beginning of this video, for example, I shared some elements from my CV, awards, exhibitions, and things like that. And I obviously did that in the hope that people would find it worthy to listen to me afterwards. But you could ask yourself if that really made the video better. And the answer is probably that it didn't. And so would it have been better if I would have used all of that time in acquiring those credentials and put that time in becoming a better communicator? Yeah, that would have probably been a better idea. Now, the third one on this list is social media. And the interesting thing about social media is that it is becoming some kind of credential of success on itself. But interestingly, with this one, I do believe it's a good investment of your time at this moment. Building an audience and having an audience is kind of essential for your success as an artist. And the perception of social media is completely changing. If you go 2 years back, for example, an artist with several million social media followers was kind of worthless. He would sell his art at $1,000 a piece at best, while other artists who only had 1,000 followers but had some solo exhibitions or anything would sell their art at 10k price points. The art world simply only cared for solo exhibitions, museum exhibitions, publications, and all of that stuff. And now, 2 years later, social media became one of the biggest and most important credentials an artist can have. If you look at Beeple, for example, who recently sold an artwork for $69 million, and we look at his art career, we see that he had nothing. No exhibitions, no museum exhibitions, no galleries, no collectors, no dealers, no awards, no publications, nothing. He basically didn't have an art career. The only thing he had was 2 million Instagram followers, and that was the only justification for his $69 million price tag. And so social media has in a couple of years become one of the biggest credentials for artists. And the best part of it all is that social media is completely free. Unlike some of these other credentials, if you go for a solo exhibition, for example, that will cost you and the gallery quite a lot of money. But showing your art on social media is completely free. The fourth tip I will give you is not really a tip, it's more like a guidance for life. And it doesn't come from me, but comes from one of the greatest artists of all time, namely Pablo Picasso, who said that the meaning of life is to find your gift. The purpose of life is to give it away. By pressing the like button on Dries Ketels videos, Pablo Picasso. And so if Pablo says that you have to press the like button on my videos, then I'm not going to be the one who is going to disagree with that, obviously. It's Pablo after all, so yeah. The fifth tip that I would give you is to don't expect others to understand you. The truth is that we don't even understand ourselves, let alone that others would understand us. And the problem with this expectation is that we oftentimes become angry, outraged, frustrated when others don't understand us and what we are doing with our art career, especially the ones that are closest to us. But here's the thing. Putting yourself out there as an artist does not mean that some people will not understand you. No, it means that most people, if not all people or almost all people, will not understand you. And that's just the way it is. And that will never go away. Not in the beginning of your career, not in the middle, not in the end. As a matter of fact, I've been doing art for almost 10 years now. And so you would expect that my friends at least would know that I am going to do art in the future. Turns out that's not really the case. When I started a YouTube channel a year ago, or a little over a year ago, the same thing happened. People didn't understand it. There were some people laughing with my accent. There were some people just questioning whether this was the right decision or not, etc, etc, etc. Fast forward 1 year later, the channel is growing 50 subscribers a day and making $500 a month in just AdSense alone. And so the channel is just doing great and is growing. And so the thing I want to say is that no matter what happens, people will never understand you. And that's just the way it is. And so when you are starting your art career, when you're going to start selling some art, there will be people supporting you and there will be people questioning you. And perhaps even in the worst case, laughing to some extent. That's just the way it is. And simple advice is don't expect them to understand you and don't let that come in between you and what you want to do. My sixth tip is to make everything as easy and simple as possible, especially when it comes to shipping. Most artists feel some kind of insecurity about their work, about their career, and want to compensate for that insecurity by coming over as professional as possible. And so what they will do is they will try to make craters made out of wood for their artworks, for the shipping and things like that. And that's just unnecessary. And so I would try to avoid all those types of things. If it's a smaller artwork, a smaller artwork on paper, I would just put it in sleeve, a carton sleeve, protect it from moisture and all of that stuff and ship it like that. If it's a bigger format, I would 100% do the same, but use a tube. And if it's a smaller canvas and you can put it in some carton box or something like that, instead of a whole wooden crater, I would 100% again use that carton stuff. And I would obviously use regular shipping providers, whatever local shipping provider you have, or international shipping provider, UPS, whatever shizzles. And I would not go for professional artwork shipment companies. That's going to be extremely expensive. Yes, it's going to result in you coming over as more professional, but all of that is just not necessary. And the thing with creators is that it also creates more burden on the collector, because now the collector has to or ship this creator back or they have to get rid of it. And so for them, it's also more work. My seventh tip is to stop perfectionism. And for me, the best way to do that was to let the market decide on everything. In the beginning of my art career, I was constantly judging myself. I was constantly judging the process, judging the art, deciding whether or not things were good enough, when in reality, I should have let the market decide. I should have stopped judging myself and let the market judge me. The market is the only thing that matters in the end anyway. And on top of that, the only way to get towards quality is through quantity. I remember this experiment done by an art teacher where he divided the class into two groups. And to one group he said, I will grade you at the end of the semester on one work. Make sure that that work is the best work possible. And to the other group he said, I will grade you on the amount of works that you produce. In other words, the more works you produce, the more grades you will get. And so to the second group, he basically said quality doesn't really matter here. And interestingly enough, at the end of the semester, obviously the second group made more works, but they also made works of much higher quality than the first group. And so it turns out that perfectionism actually lowers growth and results in less quality overall. And this is true for everything. The doing is more important than the thinking. Knowledge by itself, without execution, is simply completely worthless. Every person on this planet kind of knows what to do. The problem is that in the end, they just don't do it. The 8th tip is about taxes. Now, in the beginning of your art career, there are so many things that you have to learn about starting an art business, about selling art, that it's likely going to take you a couple of years before you understand the basics of starting an art business and the basics of selling art. And considering the taxes can be very overwhelming, my advice is simple. In the beginning, I would postpone on taxes and first do all the selling art business type of stuff, and I would only start doing taxes after the first couple of sales. And so in theory, this means that your first couple of sales will be illegal. And that's just the way it is. And the truth is that your country will not be bothered with that. Nobody will care that an artist, a very small artist, doesn't pay taxes on the first couple of sales. That's just that. Otherwise, it's going to be way too overwhelming anyway. And then you're never going to start. Now, obviously, this is not legal advice, and disclaimer. I'm not a lawyer or an accountant or anything like that. And this advice is to some extent even on the boundary. And of course, I would recommend you to in the future pay taxes on everything and do everything as accurate as possible and consult your accountant and all of that stuff. But all the way in the beginning, don't be bothered with that too much. So yeah, about those disclaimers, I'm actually not sure if it's legally required to give those disclaimers, but everybody on YouTube seems to do that, and so I guess I'm just going to play it safe and also give you a disclaimer that I'm not a lawyer or any of those types of things. And the last thing we have to talk about is the first thing that you will have to do, and that is choosing a place to sell your art. Now, this is a very important decision that on itself could already ruin your entire art career. There are so many options out there. You can sell on your website, through social media, on online galleries, marketplaces, NFT marketplaces, eBay, Etsy. And within each of these categories, there are different options. Which type of website are you going to build? Which social media platforms are you going to use? Which marketplaces, etc., etc., etc. But the thing is that for most of those options, they are simply not going to work. If you, for example, choose the worst marketplace ever and then try to drive traffic organically through Facebook posts, I will guarantee you that no matter how good your art is, no matter what you do, you will 100% fail. And so in order to make this video complete, we should be talking about the best place to sell your art online. But that would be another 20 minutes and frankly, a completely different video. And so I'm very sorry, but we're not going to do that. Predominantly, because I already did. It's called, obviously, Best Place to Sell Art Online, selling paintings fast, art galleries, VS websites, something like that. And you could be watching it right now. Hope to see you there. Ciao, ciao.